Hello again, I'm Doug Smith. This is a special edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. With me today to discuss the budget, the upcoming budget, is Town Administrator John Klimm and Finance Director Jim Lathrop. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Jim, you're new to Portsmouth and to the show. I wonder if you could give us a little bit about your background and things like that and how you got into the finance business.
Well, I went to Bryant College, now Bryant University here in Rhode Island, and was a CPA for 15 years. Back in Connecticut, I had my own practice. I sold it and took some time off, and a friend suggested I look at governmental accounting, and started that, working first for Hopkinton, Rhode Island. Then I worked for the City of New London, Connecticut, as finance director for about 3 years. And then to Westerly, Rhode Island. They hired me to consolidate the two finance departments, school and town. I was there for 3 years. And then the opportunity with Portsmouth came up, and I live in South Kingston. My daughter goes to school in East Providence, so it worked out, and I had a nice conversation with John and the manager and liked his style, and thought it was a good opportunity for me to come here.
Well, it sounds like you're the perfect guy to come here. You know, going from New London, which is a pretty good-sized city, down to Portsmouth is there's going to be some culture shock, I think.
There is a little.
If you haven't gotten it already. You know, the topic today is going to be the budget, and John, I read through your cover letter to the budget that was going to the council, and I guess my first question to either one of you guys is, how does the process play out? You've got a proposed budget that you've proposed, and I'm assuming this was put together by you two guys and everybody else in town hall, that goes then to the town council for their approval or changes or whatever. And then I believe the town council has public meetings where they discuss and they listen to people's comments on it, and then they finally make a decision. What is the timeline here?
We really start the budgetary process in the fall, working with department heads, looking at last year's budget, and then developing some guidelines for the upcoming year. Statutorily, I have to provide a budget to the council by the 1st of April. Thereafter, they have about 30 days to review it and then adopt a provisional budget. Thereafter, within 30 days from that point, they have to have a series of public hearings, which we will be doing over the next month or so, and then ultimately the budget is adopted in the month of June.
Okay, so people will have an opportunity at these public hearings to ask questions, express their concerns, etc.
Absolutely. We'll be presenting the budget starting on the 29th of April. We'll have 3 nights in a row of budget workshops, the 29th, the 30th, and then the 1st of May. We'll have every department budget presented, and that's an opportunity for the general public to come and listen to our department heads, and then thereafter to ask us questions or offer commentary, which we're very much looking for.
Now, Jim, is this process similar is this basically the same format?
It's basically the same format. Some communities do have a finance committee that is another step of the process, but Portsmouth doesn't. I've been here, this is week 9, so
okay. Welcome aboard.
I didn't have the benefit of some of the prelim work in the fall, so we've put this together. The budget is also on the town's website, so if people want to take a look at it prior to the meetings, that way they kind of can see the document itself.
Yeah, so they can go on the website and look up budget somewhere and try to find it.
Yes.
John, I noticed your letter too, which is also on the website and accessible. One of the things you said that really caught my eye at the beginning, and I'm sure you've said this before to the town council, is that like many Rhode Island communities, we're living above our means. What do you mean by that, and how well do you think we're doing on getting back on track overall?
Well, I think it's human nature, and it's certainly not unique to Portsmouth to see communities spend the maximum amount on what are envisioned as high priority items without putting a proper amount aside for a rainy day or funding less sexy items like capital infrastructure building repairs and the like. And so what I found when I came to Portsmouth, that was in fact the case, that we were not spending money on things like our roads, other infrastructure, our buildings and the like. And so we've tried to, over the last several years, change that, put more into reserves, to hopefully ultimately improve our bond rating, but more importantly to address our true needs, our real needs. All too often those things are put aside and not addressed, and that really is our challenge, to make the tough decisions. Those aren't always the most popular decisions, to commit to the discipline of a real capital long-range plan, for example. It's easy to defer it for another day or kick the can down the road, and that's what we were doing in Portsmouth.
Yeah, I think one of the key ones that you did was the road improvement plan, which is imperative. If your roads start falling apart, which they were allowed to for a couple of years.
It's really a classic case of paying me now or paying me later. You know, a $5,000 repair this year might be $100,000 in 3 or 4 years. And we literally were not spending any money to talk about over a 5 or 6 year period. And so with the help of Dave Keogh and the folks at Public Works, we put together a long-range plan, brought in engineers, calculated how much we should be spending every year, and then put a plan together that allowed us to pay for it in cash, so that we're not involved with costly borrowing, which is, I think, a wise financial decision as well. But we're already hearing from a lot of residents that they're pleased that their roads are finally being addressed. Or even if their road hasn't been addressed yet, to be able to give them some indication of where they are in the timetable, I think has been received very well.
Yeah, I think most residents of Portsmouth would applaud that decision to put $1 million into this thing every year for at least several years until they get up to a certain level. One of the things you mentioned in your letter that I thought was kind of interesting was you felt like one of the major successes this year in the finance area was the implementation of pension reforms in most of the town's departments. How important was that, do you think, to us getting our act together going forward?
It's incredibly important. One of the several budget busters, long-term budget busters under consideration was our pension system, where for years decisions were made to give additional benefits without putting aside the necessary funding. So we have found ourselves, like other communities, actually in a crisis situation of not putting enough aside for the annual required contribution to fully fund our pension plan.
Right.
And so we had a very good pension commission made up of local residents that put a plan together. But in Rhode Island, you cannot implement pension reform without negotiating with the unions and with our employees. And so there was a lengthy process over the past year. And for the most part, our town hall workers, our public works employees, our firefighters, and our non-certified school personnel have all worked with us, recognizing that we, as one community, have a financial problem, and much to their credit, they were willing to work with us to come up with a solution. And so the crisis that we were facing was that we would need to appropriate another $1.6 million a year, starting in the very year that we're in, just to fund the annual retired contribution. Now, obviously, that you can see that if you have to come up with another $1.5 million every single year,
sure,
that it puts you into a financial real challenge. And as I said before, I cannot say enough for our employees that came to the table. And these were benefits that our employees had already negotiated in good faith and assumed they would be receiving.
No, I realize there's some real
retirement.
difficulties here, but
Yeah.
I think people understand both sides of this.
Absolutely. And I think that what is really special is that here in Portsmouth, unlike other communities, we had employees that were understanding of the problem and willing to take their share of the responsibility of solving that problem.
The one exception seemed to be the police department, and Do you think there's any prospect of getting this resolved in the future here? Or?
Well, we went through a lengthy binding arbitration process, and that was only for a one-year contract. So we're just about to reopen with the police, and we're certainly hoping that in the near future, that we will convince our police employees, just as we have every other employee in town, that we have a pension problem that needs to be solved.
Getting back to this big thing called the budget itself, just to put it in some kind of perspective, I guess, we're talking about a budget that calls for total expenditures of about 57 million, almost $58 million, which is an increase of 2.2% from last year, and results in a tax increase of 2.4%. You mentioned several of the issues. There are a lot of issues in this budget, and you kind of highlighted them. I thought your letter was really great for the layman. Unlike CPAs, I can't look at a spreadsheet and figure out what it means. You want to hit some of the highlights of that, John? Just to
Of the items
Jim,
that are
please feel to jump in on any of this stuff.
in the new budget?
Yeah.
First of all, we continue to, the town council, after a budget workshop that was held in January, kind of set the parameters that they didn't want to see the budget proposal go up more than 2 or 2.5%. So they asked us to kind of stay within that range, which we have been able to do. And we did it while fully funding, once again, the roads program with cash. We were able to increase our fund balance reserves. We have, as you noted, about 8 or 9% in fund balance, but we should have that. Nationally, the standard is 15 or 16%. So we're trying to chip away at that and put more aside so that when we run into problems, unforeseen problems, that we have the wherewithal to address those concerns. I am recommending in this budget several new features. One is one of the last remaining financial challenges we have are what is called OPEB, or other post-employee benefits. They're basically health benefits for our retirees. And once again, we have not fully funded that aspect, and it will increasingly become a problem in the future. And so very similar to the Pension Commission, which was a group of local residents with financial expertise, I'm proposing a OPEB commission to study that issue over the next year, as well as making a recommendation that we, like other towns, consider forming a finance committee, a committee made up of citizens, so that we're always getting involved with a give and take with our citizens, getting their perspective on what's being proposed. I think it only could be helpful. There's an interesting partnership with the town of Middletown in the area of information technology. Instead of buying services in the private sector, we would be buying services from our sister town in Middletown. So we were pleased about that. There's a new program being proposed to fund public access. We have all these ways to water, but like so many other things in Portsmouth, there's no funding stream to go along. So over the years, a lot of our ways to water have broken down and are becoming impassable. And so I am proposing creating an annual program where there's X amount of dollars every year for our Public Works Department to work with our dedicated Harbor Commission to fund that program. And there's funding for our capital program as well. We allow for $600,000 additionally for our school department. And so staying within the parameters that were set by the council, I think we've tried to do the best that we can do with the parameters that were set.
Yeah, I thought, I guess I was wondering, I think one of the hard parts that people have getting their mind around is the idea that we need more than 9 or 10% in that rainy day fund. Of course, you can see where something very easily, you could need that in a heartbeat. And I guess people just say, well, maybe we'll get federal aid at the time or something, but I'm not sure we can count on that. Why do you think we need, and how much do we need? What would be a comfortable percentage of our budget that you think would be comfortable?
Well, personally, I think 10% is the minimum, and it's not even where the federal government may come back and help us, is we may need to pay stuff right away. If there was a disaster, can we write that check?
Yeah.
So sometimes there's a delay, anywhere from 6 months to a year, of getting that reimbursement. Most communities are at that 10% mark. Nationally, the goal is around 15 to 16%, as John said. So it's important because we collect taxes quarterly. We still have to pay bills. In July, we have a lot of bills as far as the insurances and stuff that are really front-loaded for the town. So that's why it's important to have a good fund balance.
Yeah, I suspect it would also relate to our bond rating of to have more money in the bank would probably be.
If you look at the few communities in New England that have AAA bond ratings, one consistent theme is a level of fund balance, in the 20% range. And so that is a factor when our bond rating is set. But the other issue goes back to something we already talked about, and that is we are a town that has historically not funded infrastructure and maintenance. And so it is not unrealistic to think that in any one given year you could find yourself in a crisis situation where a roof needs to be replaced or a boiler needs to be replaced or whatever. We have deferred maintenance so much that not having money set aside for the unforeseen would not be a wise thing to do.
Yeah, I noticed one of your recommendations was regarding the Melville campground was to either close it or put it out to bid. What's your thinking on that anyway?
Well, very simply, it's not making money. And many years ago, we were allowed to be in receipt of some federal land, and the requirements were that it was to be used for recreational purposes. And the community decided that it would make sense to have a campground to make money, and then to take that money and to fund youth recreation programs. An excellent idea. But the fact is if you look at the actual revenues over the last half a dozen years, we have seen a precipitous drop in revenues to a point where in the last calendar year, we literally lost money. And so it begs the question, if you're not making money, and town residents, for all intents and purposes, aren't camping in town.
Right.
And if we're not funding youth programs, well, why have it? And so the purpose of this was to get the discussion front and center. And my recommendation is that we either close it or we put it out to bid to see what other ideas might come forward, because we have to, at a minimum, get it back into the situation where it's making money for our youngsters.
Yeah, it's a beautiful little site too,
Yes.
and it's very close to Newport. All the tourist things. You think there'd be a major draw to it. So perhaps we can find some company to come in and turn it around and run it as a business.
Just from a financial standpoint, I thought it was necessary to put the item on the agenda for discussion.
Sure.
And that's kind of our view is you don't need to raise taxes. Maybe there's other sources of revenues that can pay for
I think there
operations.
probably are. We've talked about a lot of these just looking around town. The idea of mooring fees, for example, and I know that mooring fees in Newport and other places are exorbitant, and ours doesn't have to be that expensive, but I think we should be getting some return on that. At least a way to fund the harbor master and the boats and the rest of the stuff, to put it back into the...
Many communities, you have basic services, your police, your fire, your DPW, your school system. They're all defined as basic services. And then there's a whole level of services, beaches, some recreation programs or whatever. That is the general feeling that they should be paid for, at least in part, by those that use it, not the average taxpayer. And so for the first time this year, the council will be having kind of a special workshop just on revenues and fees so that we can review, because there seems to be a hodgepodge of fees and no consistency in terms of how often they are considered for adjustment and the like. And so we're trying to institutionalize that within the budgetary process. So that'll be happening in the next month or so.
I think it'd be interesting to look around because we are a waterfront community here, and we think there'd be a lot of
I
opportunities.
was rather surprised. I didn't realize that there was a community anywhere in New England that had beaches that actually lost money. But we have the dubious distinction of having a beach that in a major way is losing money every year.
Yeah, unfortunate, and they're beautiful. I mean,
Yes.
they're really great resources. Glen Manor, of course, is one of our premier attractions here in Portsmouth. I think Katie and Don have done a great job
Yes.
of keeping it together and keeping it operating. But I noticed one of the things is to look for more revenue generating functions or something there.
Well, what's clear is that what they do very well. But the question is whether or not it can be seen much more as a destination for other types of activities than weddings primarily.
Yeah.
Council President Seveny in the town councils have asked the Glen Manor Authority to look at that, to see whether there could be other opportunities, cocktail parties, clam bakes. There's a dock there.
I know.
There's some question that there might be some type of service where you could come in by boat with a group of folks and have a clam bake or a cocktail party or whatever. It really is a beautiful destination. And I don't know if you've been down there since the demolition,
Elmer
but
School demolition. No.
it really has opened it up. The vista is stunning.
Yeah, it's beautiful down there.
Yeah.
If you need somebody to try out the pier side thing, I'll be happy to come down and do that for you. Yeah, it's a beautiful spot. You know, we're really blessed to have all these things here
Yes.
in Portsmouth. That they're town resources, and I think you're right. We should try to maximize the benefits from that. A couple of weeks ago, I noticed another thing in your budget. A couple of weeks ago, we did a program at the firehouse, and we talked to Nick Lautieri, the firefighter who put together this Heart Safe program with the defibrillators around town and things like that. And I see that you've recommended that this program be expanded in the coming year. Why do you think that's important?
Well, first of all, I can't say enough about the men and women of our fire department. And this is a perfect example. This is over and above what is expected of them on a daily basis. But what we're talking about here is we're talking about saving lives. And several firefighters have taken it up on their own to create a program, and now they're expanding it, and even to a point where they're talking about helping homeowners make their homes more safe with a new program that the chief and the staff will be unveiling soon. So I really give them credit for going over and above the normal expectations in terms of trying to make this a safer community, and that's one perfect example. It really was started, as I understand, by one firefighter who really just took it upon himself. That's right, Nick.
That started.
Absolutely, and he's done a terrific job.
Yeah, and I see the results. I just happened to notice in the library, public library, there's one of those defibrillators sitting on the wall up there. I don't know if anybody knows how to use it, but the whole program seems to be a win-win kind of situation thing. One of the other things that, you know, I went on the website and I went into what I thought was the budget. Maybe it was the budget, but it ended up being the capital improvement plan. And it would look like it was a series of forms that departments had filled out for things like a truck here, a piece of equipment there. Can we really expect that the capital improvement program will ever be fully funded, or is that just kind of, you know, it just seemed like there were so many diverse things in that capital improvement plan?
Well, first of all, it wasn't until about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, that we even had a capital plan. We didn't have a one-year capital plan, never mind a 5-year capital plan. And now our department heads have worked hard to put a plan together. Will the whole plan be fully funded? No. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to do that. But we need to set priorities, and we need to commit at least a basic amount of funding. Because, as I mentioned before, you know, $100 spent today, it might be 100 times that if it's deferred.
Sure.
And so we've put the program together, and we do the best we can with the resources that we have.
And part of that long-term planning is so that we can manage resources. If we're paying off one truck in a year, maybe it's time to buy another replacement in that year, so that if you have a long-term plan, it just kind of helps instead of
Yeah, I
just
didn't
being
realize it was a
reactionary.
5-year plan, which it makes sense if it's a long-term plan. So basically, it's like a wish list of things we need,
Yes.
And so it gives you all a better feel for what we have to do, what's important. The other thing that I thought was great was this Middletown IT connection, but just the ideas of collaborating with other communities and even within our own community. I think you guys have done wonders, John, with getting together with the school department, between the town council and the school department. They're actually talking together, they're doing things together, and I think it's a real win for the community. There's more to be done there probably, and I think this is an important thing to do. Do you agree, Jim? You're coming in here new.
Well, it's something that I did in Westerly. That's why they hired me to consolidate, at least on the finance section. I think it's something important. It can be successful. It just has to be planned. It just can't be told to do it. And I think that's part of the process.
But the environment and the atmosphere, I'm not sure that enough residents know how really unique it is that we have a town council and a school committee that are truly committed to work together. Yeah, you know, there are a lot of communities where they're at war with each other, and we have two bodies with our school committee and our town council that respect each other, that want to work together. They're not always going to agree on everything, but it is coming from the outside. It really is unique and special that we have two bodies like that are so committed to cooperation.
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to the leadership of those committees, and I think this is where most residents would want to see their
Yes.
committees, their school committee and town council going. You think there are, the possibility of doing more with some of our other island communities, for example?
Well, I want to recognize Jane Howington in Newport and Sean Brown in Middletown as well, because there's been an awful lot of work over the last year about future possibilities. We're looking at not only IT that I mentioned, but geographic information systems and planning functions. But the short answer is yes, there are opportunities there, and I'm fortunate to have two colleagues in our sister communities that are absolutely willing and desirous of a close collaboration, to a point where Sean Brown came up with this idea about 6 months ago in Middletown of having an island-wide department head meetings, which we've already had one, and we're going to be having another one in another month or something. And that was a tremendously productive session where all of the fire chiefs, all of the police chiefs, all the DPW superintendents were all in one room. And it was a great idea that Sean came up with, and I really am hopeful that it will produce new ideas in the near future.
One of the things that's relatively recent in the last 6 months or so is the new town website.
Yes.
Which is a great source for finding out, getting the details of what we've been discussing here in general. And if you have any, I see that the statistics are really up on people using it or accessing it.
We've compared usage now with 1 year ago, and usage is up 58%.
Yeah.
We were delighted with the increase in activity and trafficking. It's frustrating because there's never enough hours in the day to put the information that we want to get on there, but there's been a lot of positive improvements, and we've gotten a lot of positive compliments and comments from our citizens as well.
That's great. I think it's a great town resource.
Jim's talking about actually having an electronic checkbook, so that you're going to be able to go on the website soon and see where every check that his department writes to vendors, where it goes, for what purpose, and how much.
That's pretty detailed. Yeah. We're out of time already, guys, unfortunately. Jim, I'd like to welcome you to Portsmouth.
Well, thank you.
We look forward to your work in the future, and John, thanks for all of your work on this budget. People should get involved, go to the budget hearings,
Yes.
and take part in their community. Thanks very much, gentlemen. And thank you. We'll see you next time.